Good morning, Bella Vista. It's JB Portillo here and our Mayor Peter Christie.
Good morning.
Good morning. You know, we weren't able for weather, I believe, or something last month.
That's right.
So we're going to play catch up, and I'm really curious. I don't know what's happened the last 2 months.
Well, we weathered the storm, so to speak, and of course, as we speak today, there's another one coming at us.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad, but maybe that's the end.
Who knows? That crazy groundhog went back underground,
Yes,
I believe.
he saw a shadow, so bang, another 6 weeks.
That's it. Well, I think you are going to give us the year in review and what's coming in 2022.
Sure. So what happens is, by law, every city mayor must give a state of the city by the end of February. And I usually wait until the February council meetings so that we've got a better handle on where the year-end results financially are going to look like, because we're still closing the books. And the audit will happen in April, which is normal. And but I do have some interesting information that I thought I'd share that's going to be in the actual reading that I'm going to do. I'm not going to read all of it to you. It's 4 pages long.
No, please don't.
Okay. But you know, one of the things that we can be really proud of as a city is the way that we responded to the vaccine clinics.
Yes.
We were the very first city in all of Northwest Arkansas to start offering vaccine clinics to our residents. If you remember, the original plan was, well, let's roll it out through all the pharmacies. I wasn't working. The pharmacies were overloaded. Yeah. And so I got a call from the market CEO at Northwest Hospitals who said, and this was the weekend of Martin Luther King holiday, and he said, I've got 4,000 doses and I don't know how to get it into the arms of people. So I said, give me the weekend, because I sit on the board of directors for Northwest. I'm now the chairman of the board. And so I knew how to get back to him quickly. We put a plan in place and we started thinking, well, maybe we can do 800 people over 3 days. Well, we got it down to a point where we were doing 1,300 a day. And in fact, we became the poster child, and the large JB Hunt things and whatnot that the Northwest Council has been hosting, they actually came and talked to us, lessons learned, what to avoid, and then we were asked by the governor to participate in actually writing a manual to help other states, and I know that Pennsylvania is using it. So
really,
folks, you can be really proud of our communications team, and especially our paramedics and our EMS. They did a fantastic job.
it was the most well-run event that I've been to in many years.
And you know, we estimate that 70% of all eligible people have the 2 shots, and of age also have the booster. So we're in good shape.
Good.
I would say we're probably in better shape than most of the other municipalities. You know, we're closing the books, and we're going to end the year with an estimated almost $9 million in reserve. And that's good. I'm hoping to leave a good, healthy reserve for the next mayor. The previous mayor left a very nice one for me. He left, I think, about $8 million, which was great. And I'll be going through more, you know, of the revenue expenses, but we were over revenue and under on expenses, which is always a good place to be. But some of the other accomplishments, we brought back the farmers market last year, and we had a new location, which is over in the village square, I think it's called. It's just off Lancashire.
Near Duffers?
Near Duffers. That is the
And the courthouse.
And the courthouse, that's true. And that is the geographic center of the city.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
And not a lot of people would agree with that.
No, everybody thinks it's down around JJ's and Gasano's, that area. No, it's not. It's actually right in that shopping center.
Okay.
And so we brought it back, and we're going to do it again this year. It'll start 22nd of April, I think. It'll be on a Sunday again.
But in the same place.
In the same location.
Because they've torn down the theater.
Yeah, the movie theater is now torn down. But a lot of the vendors didn't like that venue because it was hidden from the traffic.
Yes.
Even with the theater down, it's still dips down into a bit of a valley, and unless you've got signs, you probably don't even know it's happening.
Okay.
But on the other one, it's raised above the level of the highway, so it's much, much better.
And you can go have breakfast at Duffers and...
That's true. That's true. And of course, our friends over at Community Development Services were very busy. They processed 581 residential permits last year, which was breaking more records. Other than around the turn of the century when Walmart said every vendor must have a presence here. That was before the city, but I'm told that the county at one year actually issued 900 building permits up here.
Really?
So hopefully, I don't think we'll get that high, but still, it was an impressive number. We also oversaw the building of the Blowing Springs to Metfield 3.5 mile or 3.1 connector, which if you've ever driven by it on a nice day, it's full of walkers, hikers, cyclists, kids. It's really been a nice add to the community. We also had a new septic tank ordinance for new homes. We introduced an impact fee on new residences and commercial buildings to help defer the rising infrastructure costs. And we reopened Sunset Drive.
Boy, that took a while.
That took about 3 years, and I was bound and determined not to use a lot of taxpayer dollars because it wasn't a taxpayer problem. And at the end of the day, we spent a very minimal amount because we use an outside engineering firm. We don't have in-house engineering. And other than that, no other money was spent. And so how they worked it out between the architect, the construction company, and the owner, they did. It's finished. It's up to engineering spec, and we opened it up, and it's great.
Yes.
I'm glad it happened. The street department actually did 59 miles last year because we upped their resurfacing budget from 1.2 to 2.4 million. We doubled it. And that 59 miles was a 91% increase over the year before. This year, it's going to be 2.4 again. And I was talking to Superintendent Button last night at a meeting. He said he doesn't think he'll get 59 miles done this year because a lot of the arterial roads have to be done. In particular, down on Highlands Boulevard around Rocky Del Hollow and at the end by Glasgow. That's pretty rough down there, and it's got to be smoothed out. Plus, the turn onto Rocky Del Hollow is a little treacherous. So we're going to widen the apron so that you don't have to think, well, maybe I'm going to hit the car, but am I going to go in the ditch?
Or if there's a big truck there, can I make it?
That's right. So we're going to take care of that this year as well. The street department, believe it or not, got more kudos from residents than any other department this last year.
I can understand why.
And they're the unsung heroes. They're
Yes.
always there in the middle of the worst weather, and they're very, very responsive. So I was pleased. So thank you very much to those of you that actually sent in kudos and food and whatnot to the fellows and to Karen over at the street department. Our police department, of course, opened up or had a ground turning for their new police building on July 28th. It was well attended. That's on schedule and doing well. That is, of course, the largest funded project through the bond. And they also brought back fun things to do that had been canceled because of the 2020 pandemic. And they brought back Coffee with a Cop, the National Night Out, which is always in August. The Citizens Police Academy, which I might add, is starting up this spring. It'll be starting on March 29th. The press release went out yesterday. There are 16 seats available. So if you're thinking of becoming involved, and I would encourage you to do so, it's been highly successful, go onto the police website and you can sign in online. Or if you don't have that capability, call 479-855-3771. 855-3771. That's the non-emergency police number, and ask to speak to Captain Tim Cook, and he'll talk to you about your application. We're extremely proud of Officer John Herron, who this year is the Benton County Officer of the Year. He was appointed that lofty title by the Attorney General for apprehending single-handedly the two people that were involved in the murder of Officer Kevin Apple.
In Pea Ridge.
He was murdered in Pea Ridge. They ran from the scene, or not ran, they drove from the scene, and they ended up here in Bella Vista. And John actually saw them. He confirmed the license number, and the chase began, and he got them both.
Excellent.
So he did a marvelous job. He's to be congratulated. We have a marvelous police team here, and crime remains low. I gathered there was some flurry recently on Facebook or one of social medias that we were in the middle of a crime wave.
Come on.
We are not. Then the fire department, as I mentioned, they were very successful in the vaccine world, and we were the first provider offering COVID-19 rapid and PCR antigen testings. We built fire station number 3. It's finished and it's now up and running. And
it's gorgeous, by the way.
It is. And we've seen a 15% increase in the number of runs that the ambulances have been doing year over year, which I think probably parallels the growth that we're seeing as well. Mm-hmm. The library's back in business. We opened up the new area. The children's area, if you haven't been there, looks great. There are also some nice study rooms, quiet rooms where you can read a newspaper. And there are community rooms that you can book and use as well through the library. And then in November, we had some public art. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
The fireflies,
yes,
which were made by a local artist, Tom Flynn. And they are large fireflies, and he's welded them and whatnot. And they're on stands, and they're outside in various locations around the library, and at night they're glowing away. And,
yes.
The kids just stand in awe. It's great.
Including me. I'm
Yeah.
not a kid, but I think they're really cool.
And the legal team had a busy year. They filed over 2,100 cases with more than 2,700 cases, which the balance is because we still had some old cases from Bentonville. Mm-hmm. You may remember before we had the court here, we ran everything through Bentonville and all their files. Well, there were still some files there that had to be disposed, and so they've finally been transferred here, and we're going through the process of getting rid of them. The first half of the year, of course, they were focused on litigation pertaining to getting water for the new police station for fire suppression. Luckily, we didn't have to go to court, and a settlement was reached. We did have to file eminent domain lawsuits against 2 property owners for Mercy Way Bridge on the easements. That construction is going to start in April of this year.
Finally.
Finally. And it'll probably be well into next year as well. It depends on can we get the steel on time, et cetera, et cetera. You remember the fire station opened 3 months late mm-hmm. because we couldn't get the doors. Mm-hmm. So there's always something these days. And the lack of space at the county jail is still a concern. If you've got a misdemeanor arrest, that person's going to be released. Last I heard in talking to the county sheriff, he has, I think it's 619 beds, and he was at 745 inmates. He's got them sleeping on the floors, anywhere that he can build some sort of bed. It's not a good situation. And so as you know, I've been involved in the Benton County Criminal Justice Committee, and we've been looking at building not necessarily a new jail, but another annex to the jail, which would be a proper health intake area, because we don't have it today, where everybody's tested for everything. Have you got a common cold? Have you got COVID? Have you got anything else? And then we would have isolation places where we would put those people before they go into the general population. Because if you send somebody into the general population who has COVID, it takes off just like a bat mm-hmm. because they're in such confined quarters. So we've been talking about alternate ways of booking people in, and then if you're not in the middle of a pandemic, creating other holding areas for the misdemeanors. And then we have also been looking at other ways to keep people out of jail.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, and stop the revisitism. I always get that wrong. But it's those that go back to jail after having been at jail. We've got to start teaching them trades. We've got to teach them responsibility, how to balance a checkbook, how to even cook in some instances. So we've been looking at all that. Another real problem is mental health. You know, if somebody has a behavioral health problem, arresting them and taking them down to the county jail is not the answer. And it's something that I've been addressing with firefighters, anybody in a stressful job. And we don't have enough facilities to help people.
Would all of that involve building something new or just realigning what you already have?
No, we would build something new, whether it's a new separate building or build it on top of an existing.
Gotcha.
Is still on the table. This Friday, I'm actually down at the jail all day long for a day-long meeting. There are about 15 to 16 of us on this committee, judges, police, everybody, for a full day of talks. And that'll be really good.
That'll be a sobering experience, too. That
Yes.
is not the most fun place to visit.
No, it isn't. Trust me, you do not want to be in jail.
No.
And then our communication folks were busy with the vaccinations, and of course we opened the bypass, and they were involved in that. Cybersecurity is always a main concern for us, and we're very, very vigilant. Our team has been involved in Fire Station number 3 in the new public safety building. We probably spent about $200,000 last year on more software and hardware because we're continually upgrading. We still hire a company to come in and see if they can crack the code and break in. So far, touch wood, they haven't been able to do it. And at our meeting yesterday to talk about the American Rescue Plan money, there's about $300,000 that we think we could spend to upgrade even more and turn over some of the old equipment that we've got.
We're going to talk about that in the second half, right?
We are. So then what's coming up in 2022? Of course, there's the opening of Fire Station number 3 that's already occurred. We are taking to council this month a resolution to buy land from Cooper for the fire training tower. It'll be, I believe it's $112,000. It'll be located up near the Missouri border, up near the transfer station. And the reason for that site is because we're aware of some of the concerns that residents have about having the tower too close to their homes, smoke, etc. They don't use wood smoke, it's propane. But nevertheless, in order to quell the concerns, we looked for property that is out of the way, and that's what this is. So I do believe the council will approve it. We will buy the land, and then we can start the construction, which is good news. RDOC continues on the replacement of the Tanyard Creek Bridge, which you've seen, which is supposed to be finished this year, and over on Sugar Creek as well. That's the big one. That won't finish until summer of next year. We're now looking at refurbishing Fire Station number 3, the old one, into a satellite for the streets building, and about still putting in a sand salt storage area behind it so that we can get a leg up on bad weather out on the west side. And I'm pleased to tell you that not quite the end of the year, I think that the end of third quarter, we will have no debt. Now, we've still got the bond.
Right.
Okay, but the bond is fully paid for by a tax increase. And in fact, it's going to be paid off well before, we thought it'd be 12 to 15 years. Raymond James thinks it's going to be around 9. But that aside, we bought 3 brand new fire pumpers at $430,000 apiece. We bought a new ambulance at one point, which was almost $300,000. And we funded half the brand new at the time streets building, all with loans. And so at the end of this year, or the end of the third quarter, all of that's paid off. We're debt free, which is great.
Absolutely.
I did want to just say that one of the financial challenges, and I'm going to read this, that we face in 2022 is the reduction of our share of the county sales and tax. It used to be at 11.98, it's now dropped to 10.59 because it's based on census data. And while we grew 13.5% between 2010 and 2020, other cities grew faster. So that bled off some of our revenue that we would get from the county. That split of the county is our biggest revenue, not our own tax. It accounts for $6-7 million a year. However, we did a real deep dive with the folks over at the county, and I think we're going to be okay. There are a few saving graces that's helping us. One is we're going to see an increase in the property tax because every house here was reassessed in 2021. Mm-hmm. They do it every 5 years, so in 2026 you're going to see it again. There'll be enough revenue coming from that as well as the growth that the county is having that I think that we will be all right. But in the meantime, what we've done is the fire folks asked for 6 employees and we're going to give them 3. And the police department asked for 3, and we're going to hold on that as well. And we're going to have a look at it as we progress through the first quarter. The other thing that we desperately needed was a brand new ladder truck, a second one. And we have gone ahead and moved forward with that. It'll be about $1.3 million. It'll come in next year. We'll fund it either through loans or we'll see what's happening with the reserve. Mm-hmm. But we decided to move forward with that. I think we're going to be able to move forward with the increased headcount as well. On the fire side, we've actually applied for, it's called a SAFER grant, S-A-F-E-R. And we did that a number of years ago. And it is a federal grant that helps offset the cost of firefighters. And so we hired 12 under that program. And essentially what happens is for the first year, the feds pay most of it, and then it begins to move over a course of 5 years until we're absorbing all of the salaries. Well, now they've come out with a new one for 3 years where there is no city match. For 3 years, the feds are going to pick it up.
Wow. So
we have applied for that. If that's the case, then we'll be hiring more than 3.
Okay.
So that's been a concern, but we're getting there. And the streets department needs a proper wash bay. They currently operate on a special permit from the state from environmental quality, which lets them wash the vehicles outside in a special area so the runoff goes into a retention pond, and we have to collect samples on a regular basis, send it down to Little Rock to make sure that we're not putting any bad stuff in there. There is going to come a time, probably sooner than later, where ADEQ is just going to say, okay, enough. And so we'd like to see if we can get a leg up on that this year as well. I think it's about $240,000 to put it into play. The problem will be we're building the police station, as you know, mm-hmm. right beside the existing streets building.
Yes.
And there's a little room at the back in between the two, and that's where we're going to put the wash bay.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And so it might be a little tricky trying to put it in this year just from space. But we're very cognizant that that's going to happen.
Okay.
And of course, as I do every year, my thanks to everybody who volunteers in this community. In so many places, you do a marvelous job. We couldn't do it without you. And keep up the great work. Thank you very much. And for those who pick up litter, a special thank you.
And no kidding. No kidding. Well, how about us take a quick
Sure.
break, and then we will talk about the American Rescue Plan, because I know that's a big issue right now.
Yeah, that is a big issue.
Okay. So we'll be right back. Stay. Hi there, we're back, and now we're going to talk about something that's been out there for a while, and I don't know how you actually manage something like this, but I guess we're going to find out. The American Rescue Plan?
Yes, the American Rescue Plan was passed by Congress last year. unlike the CARES Act where you had to meticulously tell them ahead of time what you were going to do, this one is there's the money, have fun. Now, each city and each county in the land got an allotment. Ours is 5.9 million. You get half of it in the first year, which was last year, so we got that. And we'll get the second half this year. The challenge we had out of the gate was there were no official rules from Treasury. They kept saying, we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it, and we'll have it ready by the end of August. Well, it wasn't ready until the end of the year. And so the Municipal League had told all the cities, don't spend a dime, because we don't know what you can really spend it on yet, especially in the nitty-gritty, because unlike the CARES Act where you had to tell them ahead of time, this time you don't have to tell them ahead of time. You report it after the fact, and if they come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't really meet the criteria, you got to pay it back. So that wasn't much fun to look forward to either. In the beginning, the broad guidance, if you like, before they issued the official rules, was you could spend it on recouping revenue loss. Well, we didn't lose any revenue. We actually made revenue because people were sitting at home and ordering stuff on the internet. Thank you very much. The second was you can spend it on sewer or water projects that are somewhat related to COVID or improving the quality of those two. Well, we don't have sewer or water.
No.
Those are private companies. Or you can spend it on broadband. Now that I latched onto, and because we have 2 or 3 holes, if you like, in the city where there is no internet at all. And Cox and AT&T won't budge because their return on investment models don't show a very good return on investment, but they will do it if everybody on the street is willing to pay $umpteen thousand each. They'll come in and put it in because it has to be buried. It's very, very expensive. And so I thought, well, because I came out of that industry, I know 5.9 million to put in outside plants such as fiber optics is a spit in the bucket because it costs tens of millions, especially what we're facing up here.
Yeah, the terrain here is not helpful.
That's right. And they can't use the poles anymore because Carroll Electric has said, we're not doing joint use poles anymore.
Okay.
So you got to bury it. But nevertheless, I then began down this path of, well, is there other funding available through the state and the feds? And it became very confusing because it turned out that there was some money from the feds, but only for rural programs, and for Arkansas, that turned out to be about 400 million. But we're not rural, so I couldn't get into that money. I've been working with some of the other cities because they've been looking at the same thing, and so has Judge Mooring down at the county level. Well, then the governor, who's always been big on this kind of stuff, became even more of a proponent for it when Treasury finally issued the new rules. And the new rules were completely different, of course.
Of course.
And so basically what they said was, look, we've had a lot of feedback from a lot of the cities and the counties that you really can't do a lot with the money that you've given us. Yeah, that's true, as we just talked about. So tell you what, if your allocation is less than $10 million, you can use it on whatever you want for government-related programs. Great. So that widened the scope immensely. And the governor then got on board and he hired a consultant whose name is Lou McAllister. He's a CEO of a broadband consulting firm. I've met with him, who has been given the mandate to put together a complete plan for all of the state. And he has to have that in the governor's hand by April the 9th. And so I thought, okay, this is good. Now, we can divvy up the 5.9 into many buckets because I know that there are concerns elsewhere within our city. So what we did was pulled the senior staff together and we came up with a list of 11 projects. And we then, about 2.5 weeks ago, invited public comment. And by the cutoff date, we had 77 people respond, and then we had 3 more trickle in after that. Thank you very much. I'm so glad you did that. We had a lot of good, constructive comments. Some are perfectly happy with the way it's laid out. Others thought that we should be putting more into water and sewer. Can't do that because I don't own any water or sewer. One person thought we should just dump it all into streets. Yeah, that'd be nice, but the problem is there are other things that other people want, so you have to do the balancing act. So we had a special council meeting last night. It was a special work session, which means no decisions are made. Mm-hmm. Work sessions are an opportunity for members of council to get more information on a certain topic or topics. There's always a work session, as you know, 1 week prior to the regular session.
Yes.
But then you can have special ones. So we had a special one last night to do nothing but talk about ARPA funds and these projects and the feedback that, that we received. We opened it up to the public. Unfortunately, I think we had one person from the public there, but all of council was there, all the department heads were there, and we dove into it. They were in no particular order. The very first one, and I want to dispel a lot of the angst that perhaps is going on in the community, was $1.2 million for what we were calling an employee bonus for essential non-exempt employees who have worked during the pandemic. It's not a bonus per se, it's part of our recruitment and retention strategy, because here's what's happening. A lot of our sister cities are offering much larger annual payroll increases than we can afford. We don't have a large commercial tax base. So we had an annual increase this year for our employees of 3.5% as we go into the 2022. Some of the other cities went as high as 12%.
Oh no.
I can't match that.
No.
And then we had another city who decided they were going to quickly ramp up EMS and paramedics because of the growth they've been having. So what they did was they had X number of positions, and they offered, it didn't matter how much experience you had, they were willing to pay you midpoint on the pay band. I lost 11 EMTs in the space of a week and a half.
Oh my.
And other cities are having the same problem. Fayetteville, that gave a huge increase, is still well behind on the hiring of police officers. So what my point is, not only is the private sector struggling to get people to work, so is the public sector. I need a mechanism to protect all of us from fire and police. We've got to have enough bodies in place so when the bad guys want to do something, I can send out the police. If we have a fire or a need, even another vaccine clinic, God forbid, if we have yet another surge, I need to have the people here so I can service the community. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to do. It's not a bonus. It's a retention strategy to stop people from leaving. And so we talked about it at great length last night. HR has put together 2 proposals, which are less in money than this. That was a maximum cap that we guessed at based on the preliminary data that we were working with. And we might pay it over 2 years. Anybody who's salaried, with the exception of some of the lower salaried areas, will not get this. No elected official would get it. So I want to put that very clear on the table as well. These are basically the hourly wage people who have slaved through this whole pandemic thing and now are willing to jump for $1 an hour more. I've seen this once before, way back when I was in Canada and I was in banking. The oil patch in Canada took off. And our sister branches out there were losing people hand over fist for 25 cents an hour increase. Mm. So this is basically what we're going through here. It'll eventually all straighten out, but that's what we're trying to do, is to stop people from leaving and to stay. So I want to be very clear about that. So last night we decided we would continue to look at it, and it's probably one of the #1 things that we should be looking at. Broadband improvements, I had 1.03 million. So when I was speaking to Mr. McAllister last week in Gentry, there was a special broadband discussion open to anybody in Benton County. And so I went and I explained our problem here. And he said, look, Peter, there's hundreds of millions of dollars that are still going to come down the pipe from the feds. Your 1.03, it's nice, but it's not going to get you much because you have to bury it. It might get you, I don't know, a couple of 100 feet down the road, and that's it. He said, spend that money on something else. He also said, you have to understand, I will put my report into the governor's hand on April the 9th. By the summertime, it'll go to the legislature tours down in Little Rock, and they as policy makers then have to make a lot of decisions. Some of the decisions are accountability. He told me that 20 years ago, state gave the carriers a lot of money and just said, go fix internet. They didn't do it. They kept the money. So the legislators down there are saying, it's going to be different this time. You're going to have to be held accountable, so we need to put rules in place. Some of the other things that Mr. McAllister mentioned to me was, how do you divvy up the money between the carriers? We've got Cox AT&T, Ozark Go, and others, you know, that are coming forward. And so if you've got a pocket there that needs help, do you give it to one company? Probably not, because now you're getting into an antitrust where you're maybe setting up a monopoly in that area. So do you give it to two? Do you give it to all of them? How do you divvy the money up? And he said, that's going to take a long time. So he basically said, with the ARPA money, and he's correct, we have to obligate this money by 2024. Obligate means we have to have a resolution passed by council that says X number of dollars are going to be spent on this project, that project, etc. And then the money must be spent by the end of 2026, so you're going to have to give it back. So it may seem that we've got a lot of time, 3 years. 3 years will go very, very quickly, trust me. And so at the end of the day, Mr. McAllister convinced me to spend the money elsewhere. And I had a long chat with the carriers about it. I've talked to some of the people that are stuck in these areas, and they agree that, you know, a little over $1 million really was just a spit in the bucket. It wasn't going to do much. So let's wait for the bigger hundreds of millions to come in, and let's do it right. Because there are maps that have to be drawn up by all the carriers showing specifically in each area of service where are the holes. And I know Cox is just about finished, and I think AT&T is still working on theirs. So then we had a whole list of other things. I won't take you through all of them, but there were two that we are going to move on, well, three fairly quickly. The first one, HR is sending out 2 big files of 2 possible ways to have the retention put into place. We are also looking at IT improvements. We've got $300,000 set aside with a whole list of things that have to be done. Folks, I cannot tell you that you must, as a city or a business, stay on top of your IT. The hackers are real. You've heard about the ransomware. I don't want us getting into a position where we have to pay ransomware. We have a very hardened network. But you can't just say, I'm done, I'm finished, everything's fine. You have to stay on top of it all the time. We even have special courses for all of our employees because one of the weakest links is your employee.
Yes.
You don't leave a computer on at night. You shut it off. The other things we have to look for, where is the old equipment? Is anything running, for example, on Windows 7? We're at Windows 11 these days.
Yes.
7 is easily hacked. So we have some older equipment as well that is obsolete, especially photocopiers. They're attached to the network.
Yes.
Okay? So the photocopier company has old software, the Microsofts of the world will say, we're going to upgrade, Microsoft 10 to 1.3 port, and the photocopier can't do it.
And they're not caught up, and they don't have any.
That's right.
I know.
So what we're going to be looking at very closely is exactly what we do with computers. We're not going to buy these things, we're going to lease them, because we haven't bought computers in years. We lease them for 5 years, and then after that, we destroy the hard drive, and then I give the boat anchor back to Dell and say, it's your problem.
And you have current upgrades all
Correct.
the time.
That's right. So I think there were four photocopiers that are old. That's the plan. So what council instructed the IT director to do last night was go out and get the bids, because we have to follow the Fed purchasing policy and our own purchasing policy. Get the bids for each of those chunks that you want to do that add up to $300,000, and then come back to us. So we're going to move fairly quickly on that one as well. The one that we're going to move immediately on was a no-brainer. They're special antivirus, antibacterial filters that you can put onto the HVAC system in the library. Because in the new edition, all the HVAC is new. And we can adapt some of the older ones in the older area as well. So on 9 of those machines, we can actually put these filters, which are $1,000 a piece. They're good for 3 years. The total cost with tax and whatnot is $9,756. So we can purchase them now. And we have the money. I'm not sure that we'll take it out of this, because it's only $10,000. We talked last night. We have more than enough reserves. Let's do the reserves and take this 10 and put it somewhere else. But we are going to do it. It's going to come in front of council this month. I believe it'll pass. And then Director Adams will go, procure, and get them put in place.
And I believe the next council meeting is the 28th of February? The last
yes.
Monday?
It's the last Monday, that's right.
So if you all are interested in this, show up.
And the work session will be held next Tuesday.
Tuesday instead of Monday.
Instead of Monday, because Monday is President's Day and we're closed.
Yes.
But then the main council meeting will be the following week.
Yes.
The work sessions are really the meat and potatoes. You can't speak at them, but after it's adjourned, there's nothing stopping you from going and talking individually to any member of council, any department heads that's there, me, and that happens all the time. Mm-hmm. At the council meetings, you can speak on any topic you want. Some councils only say that stuff on the agenda, but we open it up. But you've only got 3 minutes, and we'll hold it to you on 3 minutes, because there are other people who deserve to have their time as well.
Right.
So that's the American Rescue Plan. We want to do it as much as we possibly can in a fully thought out manner. One of the areas that everybody's been talking about is, how do I get rid of my yard waste? Because we don't have stump dumps anymore. And so one of the things that we looked at was air curtain burner technology, because that's what the contractors used to put out the burn over at the stump dump. And basically it's a great big metal pit, and you have air blowers on the top. So you fire it up. It's a hot fire. They usually start it with kerosene. And you can load this thing up, and as the smoke goes up, the air curtain forces the smoke back down. And so you, at the end of the day, have much less smoke coming up. A lot of people, however, wanted to look at composting, which is not a bad idea. But here's the challenge with both of those. Dollars aside, you're going to have to buy land. So where's the land going to be? Does anybody really want to live next door to a composter where the smell might be bad? Does anybody want to live close to, a burner where there's still going to be smoke? So you'll have to find land in a remote area. What size of land? It'll be much smaller for the burner. It'll be much bigger for the composter, because you have to continually turn in windrows.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a demand for the compost product? You remember we had the straight line wind a few years ago?
Yes.
And most of the mulch from the grindings was taken away. We couldn't find anybody to buy it. We couldn't even give it away. And we had chipped our own pile, and it was over at the streets department for a long time. So we eventually had to mix it with some of the gravel that we use on our very, very narrow shoulders. And it's now gone, and we burned a little bit of it as well. We couldn't give it away.
That surprises me.
Well, we thought there might be a market if the mulch was dried.
Yes.
With the farmers. But the farmers only want pine. They don't want oak. All of ours was oak. So we'd have to have a look at that as well.
Yeah.
We would also have to involve state environmental quality and the state health department. And we had a very quick conversation a couple of years ago with them about a stump dump. You're looking into a ton of permits, a very long time to get everything in place to satisfy their requirements. So we may be looking at years before we can get either one of these going. But now the time is to have the discussion.
Yes.
What does it look like? So I would really like someone on council to stand up and take this, or if there's somebody out there who's got knowledge on this type of stuff, please get in touch with me, and we'll see if we can't get a citizens committee together so that you folks can go out, explore, and get the answers for us, because I don't have enough hours in the day. Staff is up to their eyeballs on other things. So if there's anybody listening right now, please get in touch with me at City Hall, and let's chat and see if we can't do something.
Okay, boy, a lot of stuff this morning. Very important.
Yep.
You know, I think we probably need to wind things up right now.
Sure.
But what I'd like to say, and I'm sure maybe you would too, because I love it when a lot of folks show up for the work sessions for council, for the planning, for all of this stuff. Because you can stay in touch with what's going on and you can have input instead of wandering around and not knowing what's going on and listening to Facebook.
Yes. Facebook seldom gets it right. And I think
right.
most people know that.
So the 28th at 6:30.
In the courthouse.
In the courthouse. Come on out.
That's the regular session. That's when decisions are made and voted on.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Enjoyed
I know it was long today, but it was much necessary. And, you know, I need to know these things, and it's been 2 months. So I'm sure everybody else is glad to hear you talk today, too.
Pleasure to be here.
You bet. See you next month?
Yep.
Okay. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.